We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route and how fast. Almost all the world's constitutions are documents in which governments tell the people what their privileges are. Our Constitution is a document in which we the people tell the government what it is allowed to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
All right, guys, welcome to Candid Conversation this evening. It's a Wednesday. It is Wednesday, correct? Yeah, 7 o'clock. We got Dr. Jeff Coggin, independent candidate for Tennessee House Seat 20, back again. And I'm going to let him introduce the other guest, who he knows rather well. And then we're just going to let Jeff do what he does best and run the show, and we'll sit back and listen to what he's got to say and answer some questions. What do you think about that, Jeff?
Hey, sounds good, Brian. Well, first of all, thank you for letting me come back on Resolute Exposure. I'm excited about being here. Thank you for what you're doing. I think, great Americans at this very, very pivotal time, one of the biggest things we can do is bring the truth to the citizens, and using modern technology and through conversation, just so important. So Brian, you're a patriot, man, a warrior. And, like I said, I've been around the military for a long time, and you are a warrior. So I like that cap you're wearing.
Yeah.
Being a military guy, uniforms are a pretty big deal. And I don't know, I think it goes back to even when I was young, I always kind of admired the scouts, Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and they had those uniforms and caps. And it's just so funny. I joined the military, and something about a uniform, it shows that people are moving in the same direction. It's kind of like being on a sports team. You're in the huddle together, and you know who you are, and you know who your opposition is. And I think that's important, because I spent time in Afghanistan and Iraq, and in Afghanistan particularly, we didn't always know who our enemy were, because they blended in with the population. They used hit and run tactics. Terrorists did all kind of things that they would mask in with children and women, and do terrible things to our troops and our allies. We're in a war right now, without a doubt. I don't think anybody can disagree. This is a cultural war. This is a political war. This is a war of ideas. And the problem is, it's tough to figure out who the good folks are and who the bad folks are. But I would say this: anybody who's willing to come on Resolute Exposure is part of our team. I'm going to talk a little bit about a summer trip I made, but let's go back 250 years and let's talk about the two major groups. The loyalists, who were loyal to the King and Queen of England and to the monarchy. And then there were the patriots, the colonials, the colonists. And I think today that's still very much true. I think we have patriots who are people such as yourself and others who love this country. They're concerned about the next generation, our children and grandchildren. They believe that taxpayer dollars belong to the taxpayer, and that government should use those funds smartly for the priorities of the people, and they should not be wasted and abused. That the government works for us. So, it's just kind of like President Reagan in your intro. I still go back to that. So today, I think what we have the patriots, and the patriots are the folks who, again, are wanting to change peacefully our nation and move it back on a path that makes sense and inspires and motivates our youth to feel hopeful and feel like the future is going to be bright. And then there's the loyalists, and these loyalists are no longer loyalists to some monarch across the ocean. They are loyalists to political parties that have been entrenched for 250 years. And it's like these folks who are, and I say on the left and right, but quite frankly, it's a circle, and these folks are joined at the hip together. And they are so afraid of what we're trying to do, and they should be, because their days are numbered. Republicans and Democrats, these political parties are like horse and buggy. Those days are over, and it's time to move away from them. But you still got some folks who are clinging to those parties because that's how they've made a lot of money. It's where they get their power. It's where they feel like they can be bold and whatever they're trying to do. But quite frankly, they're going to be on the wrong side of history. And what we're starting here in Blount County, of all counties and of all states, the beautiful county of Blount, Tennessee, is where I believe this movement is starting. And it's going to be the shot heard around the world, or at least around our country, where we're going to mobilize citizens who want to do the right thing for the next generation, and we're going to take our government back. And I was listening to Blunt Breakdown last night, and y'all guys did an amazing job. And that Anna Gibson, oh my God, she is a rock star.
Yeah, she's good, yeah.
She is smart. She's well-read. She's finishing up her doctorate. So we're going to have another doctor on the show. Melissa Moranville just completed her PhD. Yep. I don't know, brother. Again, 3 letters are not going to make you very wise. What I've learned from getting my doctorate is I really don't know anything. You know, the more education you get, you should become humble, and you should realize, man, I really don't know much at all, versus being uninformed, uneducated, and arrogant and think you got it all figured out. We need to become enlightened and informed and realize, man, I need to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
That means surrounding yourself by good people. In fact, surround yourself by people better than yourself. If you are the smartest person in your friends group, it's time to find a new friends group.
Yeah.
And this is what we talk to our cadets at Heritage all the time about, is look at the 6 people you hang around with, because you're going to become basically who they are. I mean, it's just a fact of life. We're impacted by our surroundings and the people we relate to. So pick your friends groups. So I encourage our citizens in Blount County and beyond to be looking at their friends group. Are you hanging out with folks who aren't voting, who are uninformed, who don't care anything about our nation, who are just putting their head in their sand? Time to find some new friends. Find some new friends who are motivated, who says, listen, the future matters for our children, and I'm not going to stand quietly and let our nation be destroyed. Because we just celebrated our 250th anniversary, and hopefully everybody had a very blessed 4th of July.
Good.
But here's what we really need to be looking at, is what I call hashtag 250 next. Where are we going in the next 250 years? And will we even make it as a nation if we keep going on the trajectory we're on? And I just am very, very worried that if we keep going down this path, which is causing our young generation to just basically disengage and feel hopeless, there's not going to be much left for us. So with that being said, I feel very blessed tonight. I've got, we talk about a brother from another mother. I kind of think this guy is probably that. We don't have a chance to fellowship as much as we want, but every time I talk to Mr. Alan Childress, this guy is a super smart guy who loves his country. He is a dad. And are you, Alan, a grandfather as well?
No, yet.
Yeah. But you are well-informed, well-educated, a researcher who is always evolving because of his computer science and computer programming background. You can never get comfortable in that career field because it's always evolving. So he's had to be a lifelong learner. So Alan, I know you are over, I heard it called this yesterday, the west coast of Tennessee up against the Mississippi River in Shelby County in the great city of Memphis. And we're excited about this because that means Resolute Exposure's reach is now crossing the great state of Tennessee. And I think Ryan's probably excited about that because this thing is growing and it's just going to keep moving. You are, again, a smart guy who's going to be able to help us understand in this modern time, we are kind of battling a new revolutionary war. And this is a peaceful, lawful mobilizing of citizens. But we've got tools that we must harness, and it could be AI, maybe others. But Alan, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Jeff, I always enjoyed our conversations, and I really became intrigued as Jeff began to focus in on this. Listening to both sides. This is my goal is to bring those sides together, and I admire groups that are thinking about that. To realize that we are Americans and that we're getting played, and that we need to figure out who those players are, foreign and domestic, and that we need to get that figured out. So I've always loved technology since I was 10 years old, and I started programming when I was 15. And I've been doing a lot of things for about 40 different years. I've worked for the Federal Reserve, and I've worked for different banks and energy and such. And so I've gotten to see what corporate America is like, and good and bad. And I see everybody doing their best in their role. Everybody is trying to move their ball forward, and the more that we can unify, then I think the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And brother, you hit something. You said foreign and domestic. And for my veterans who are out there in cyberspace with us right now, brothers and sisters, when we took the oath of office, we swore to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that oath does not end when you took that uniform off. That oath did not end when your enlistment or your time of commission was over. If you're a leader, you never stop leading. If you're a warrior, you never stop defending those who cannot defend themselves. That's what warriors are. Warriors are not someone who wants to go out and cause war and hurt people. Warriors hate war. Warriors are defenders for those who can't speak for themselves, who can't defend themselves. And to me, that's our children. It's our elderly. It's our folks with disabilities. It's our average citizens who are just trying to make a living, and they're being pounded by these outrageous costs at the pump, at the grocery store. And it's causing them to make decisions between, do I feed my child? Do I put gas in the car? Do I have to leave my child alone because I can't afford daycare? It's wrong. And Alan, you're absolutely right, brother. We have got to step up. I went and heard Monty Fritz speak last night. And for those who probably know, Monty Fritz is one of three Republicans who are running to be the governor of Tennessee. Marsha Blackburn, John Rose, and Monty Fritz. And I've heard him speak about 2 times in person, and I heard him on, I think, Resolute Exposure. You had Monty. And of course, Monty is a warrior. He's a prior Army guy, downrange service, has done a lot of things. And he really called out the men and also women, but he called out the men last night when he was talking with our group. And he said, men, we are called to be warriors and poets. He said that is what's in our DNA. Men are fighters or warriors fighting for what is right. And then we're also poets because we want to be creative and we want to develop and we want to build. And so he was kind of calling men out. And I think he's right. It's time for men to step up. It's time for men to become the warriors and poets that we need to be. It's time to stop putting all the burden sometimes on the ladies, because a lot of guys have just been checking out. A lot of young men have been checking out. And it's time for we, the people, to step up. So, Brian, just a few things I really want to talk about. Number one, I want to talk about Resolute Exposure having a party on the 28th of July at 7 p.m. at Maryville Billiards. Okay, brother, talk to us about that again.
That's funny. You plugged that. I wasn't going to say anything about that. You know that?
You talked about it last night. Do you
I
mind?
did. Yeah. Because we are. I didn't know if it was something that, I don't know, people might enjoy. Anyway, we have a small following of people that like us, or they claim to like us anyhow, so I've done several podcasts with several people who I haven't met personally. I've met Jeff on more than one occasion now, you know what I mean? So I just thought it would be a good place. Well, I got in touch with Farrah Deck, who owns Maryville Billiards, her and her husband. And we had to find a night because they do tournaments and stuff there. And Tuesday, which is also the night that we do Blount County Breakdown, was good. So we're going to go there. I rented a table so that we could shoot some pool if that's what what we want to do. I have a little area there, some refreshments and food while it lasts, and then hopefully all the hosts that have been on the show will show up, and just a casual conversation. It doesn't have to be politics. It's just, hey, it's finally nice to put a hand on a face that, or see somebody that you didn't, really know before. So I was just throwing it out there, testing the water, see how well it's going to work. And if it works out to be okay, then, we'll do another setup somewhere else, maybe, you know what I mean? And go from there. So
I think it's fantastic. I think ever since 2020 and COVID did something that is a plan that enemies use in warfare, and it's called isolate and divide the population. And when you isolate people and you get them to hunker down inside their shelter, inside their home, or you get them so they're not out socializing and networking and building relationships, it makes them less informed. It makes them maybe a little bit less motivated. And that is an old military tactic that I think the enemy is using against us right now. So I applaud you for wanting to do things online.
right.
We still need to have a little bit of that in-person meet and greet. So I applaud you. And here's what I want to kind of challenge possibly you to think about. What if we, on that event, and hopefully others, between now and the 5th of October, that is the deadline to register to vote on 3 November 2026, which is our upcoming general election. So you've got to register to vote by 5 October. So we need to do a little homework, and I think it's pretty straightforward, but figure out how can we register voters at the event on the 28th of July. And then as you have other events, we are rocking the vote, get out the vote. And here's who we need to focus on, brother, is our 18 to 25-year-olds, or really any first-time voters, anybody out there who has never voted. We need you, man. We need every one of you, because the problem is we've got these just small groups of extremists, these extremist groups who are basically right now controlling the vote because they show up and vote every time the door opens. But there's a whole group of Americans who basically have either become disenchanted, believe their vote doesn't matter. And if we can mobilize that number, we're going to be able to easily start replacing and firing these folks who do not have the best interests of our government. Alan, your thoughts about getting people registered to vote, and how do we get, because you've got young folks in your family and all that, any thoughts about how we mobilize more folks, motivate them to get registered and go vote?
There are ample technologies involved, but you can look at other campaigns. I'm a fan of some young politicians there in Texas, and they're definitely bringing up the young folk, and so you can learn from that. So using AI prompts is a great way to learn anything, right? And how do I learn about blah blah? And so you basically ask exactly that question, and it's interesting to get into a dialogue with it, because then that goes forward, and you can actually make sure you ask for links, right? Links will then give you resources to then go follow and contact other people, etc. But that can, in fact, give me a plan for how to bring out the vote, and it will bring out a whole step-by-step plan on things. It'll do that as easy for working on your car. How do I work on my car? How do I bring out the vote? How do I, whatever it is that you want to get better at, right? And so that I'd recommend using it to the full advantage.
And that's something, all three of us are not necessarily digital natives. I mean, obviously, Alan's been in computer science and the internet and cyberspace for a lot longer. But we're not digital natives, meaning that my default position when I try to solve problems and do things has always been more of the traditional pen and paper, traditional books. So I had to start reminding myself that we've got this great tool out there, AI, that we can't just turn our lives over to, and we can't just assume it's always right, but it can do a lot of stuff for us, right? It can do some research, it can do some admin work. It basically becomes our force multiplier, right?
Right.
Now we have an assistant. We have assistants out there.
Well, and pay attention to this concept called an MCP. So MCP servers, I forget what it stands for right now, but it's how basically AI hits the road. So if you needed to help you plan out a vacation, actually get tickets for the vacation, actually order tickets for something else, etc. MCP servers are the way that it connects first off to your email, to your other systems. And so you authorize it using something called OAuth. And it will then connect and it can begin to actually send emails on your behalf and that kind of stuff. So look at MCP as a way to accomplish that.
Then hang on. You like that enough to? It's almost a trust issue for me. You know what I mean? I like AI. I don't know if that I would like it in that context. Not yet, but I do understand
Well, let
this.
me tell you how I'm going to accomplish it, right? Which is that I've created a duplicate, a digital form, which I have my regular email address, but then I have a .ai address,
Right.
and I authorize it to only the limited things that I'm willing to give it to, not my whole system, but I can, it's like having a friend, and you authorize that friend for the particular parts, and they can contribute either read only or read write
Right.
and modify it. So that's the way that you contain it, but then it can actually start doing things on your behalf that you give it access to.
That's amazing. Well, that makes me a little bit more secure about that for sure, because I use AI a little bit because with research, that kind of thing, and sometimes it comes up wrong. But what I have noticed is if you can show it where it made its mistake, it will correct it and go down. I know that you could probably take it down the path that you want, but overall, if it comes up wrong, you can kind of correct it. And so it made me give the analogy when I was talking to some people at work is this, like, imagine giving a 5-year-old all the information in the world and what would it do with it, So if you don't teach it and train it and learn from it at the same time, it's just going to sit there and act like that. So I've learned to try to communicate with it in some form or fashion. So
Here's a metaphor that I share is that basically it's like, the glass of sugar water that's got nothing going on right now. And you take that string and you put it in the sugar water and it begins to crystallize around it. That's your prompt. The thing that you ask is that it crystallizes around it. You put in an odd shape and you're going to get an odd shape. You put in a puppy dog and you're going to get a crystallized puppy dog out of it, right? And the key thing is we often go in and we do just what we're wanting. But another thing to ask is, what do I not know about? Tell me something that I don't know about in this area. And it'll, out of everything possible, it'll go get the thing that's next closest neighbor and add to your knowledge. So that's a great way to learn is say, what else should I know about in this area, right?
Yeah.
So think of it that way.
So, Jeff, back to your point about registering to vote and all that. Sure. I'll say this. When we've done the numbers for Blount County, there's a lot of registered voters. I think what happens is they get excited at moments, and then they start to see things unravel, and then they get discouraged, and so they just don't show up. They only show up for what they think is the most important things, which seems to be just the presidential elections, which I used to be just like that, So now that I've, over the last, 12 years where I've gotten more into, or maybe longer, to the local politics of things, the older I've got, the more mature I've got, where I see I don't like the direction that they've done. I know that my vote is probably more important now than it was, but trying to convince people to show up to do that. And then they've made it convenient. I mean, they give you early voting, mail-in voting, all these other avenues and outlets. It's not, so it's when you hear people say that they just don't have time or it doesn't fit into their schedule.
Part of that's bringing awareness on that point, right? Being aware that folks don't always know the things that in terms of the early voting rocks, right? On your schedule, when you get time, take your break from work, go do it, instead of a defined moment and waiting in line, the lines are better when you early register. So that's a great point.
Yeah. So I'm definitely going to make a strong point, and Alan, definitely your technology and your expertise definitely want to kind of pick your brain, because a couple of things. Number one is we are taught in the military that we should benchmark off the high performing organizations. In fact, they encourage us to borrow ideas, to take ideas. I remember going to different bases before we would get inspected, because my commander would say, hey, Cog, I want you to go find out how are they doing something, because they got a really good inspection grade, and I want you to learn from that, and I want you to bring it back to our base so we can do well. So we've got to get out of these stovepipes, out of these little fiefdoms, And we got to say, if Texas is doing something good to get people out voting and get young folks excited, then let's learn from Texas. Let's learn from some of these other states. But when somebody thinks they know it all, and that's the problem, it comes down to humility. A humble person realizes they do not know everything. An arrogant person thinks they have all the answers, they're unwilling to learn, and they simply do not ever want to either share or get ideas from somebody else. And that's not leadership. That's just small-minded thinking. And that's unfortunately what we're seeing in our country a lot of times. So I'd go to this. Matthew Snow is running as a write-in candidate. So Matt, if you're out there, brother, I saw you pulling the big orange sign last night around. I know you've met a lot of resistance in Nashville to get qualified for the position for Blount County highway superintendent. Something I learned about the position Matt's running for is they actually have credentials and certification requirements for you to run for that position.
Isn't that funny?
And isn't that funny? And doesn't it make sense? Because I don't want someone being in charge of my highways and my safety where my children and grandchildren are traveling on, and they not know anything about civil engineering and load bearing requirements and all the things you need to know. As an American citizen, we must demand that every position have a duty description. It must have skills, training, and education that's required for it, whether it's dog catcher or president of the United States. We have got to stop putting people who are not qualified into positions that require a ton of brain power, a lot of education, a lot of experience. I keep going back. We're running our
journalists too, please.
What's that?
I said journalists too, please.
Yeah,
I get tired of listening to journalists that don't know what they're writing about.
Well, exactly. I mean, what happened to professional credentials? We run. I've been teaching at Heritage. Just start my 8th year, and it's always around homecoming. There's football homecoming and there's basketball homecoming. And Brian, you're a mountaineer, brother. You've walked those hallowed halls of Heritage High School, and you know where the intersection comes between wing 1, 2, and 3. And each of the wings has a homecoming person or court or queen, somebody running. And for a week, they come in and they decorate and they have these signs and vote for me, and all these cute little sayings. And it comes down to a popularity contest. I know that person. They're on whatever cheer squad, football team. And it comes down to, kind of a good old boy, good old girl, whoever gets the most votes. And we're still playing that game with the most critical thing that we can offer our next generation. And that is freedom and our democracy and our republic. We can't do it that way. Do not put someone in a position of authority and leadership who has no skill set to do that. Alan, your thoughts on how do we start professionalizing our republic, our democracy, our public service to make it so it's a functioning, efficient operation?
I think about the students that don't have an opportunity to learn things. I think that they do deserve opportunities as well. So it's got to be a balance in there somewhere. But, if you make like a 60, 80%, so you know a good chunk of it and don't know all of it. But I like the idea in terms of causing people to learn more relative to what they're about to take on, right? In terms of technology, you can learn so much. There's nothing you can't learn at this point online. So if you got a driver's test that you've got to go take, right, you can go study for it. And any certification on these AIs at this point have taken the bar and they have passed the legal bar. So they clearly know the information and so they can teach us. So sorry, I don't have a lot on that particular subject, but certainly you can step up and learn any given point on it and could ask it for what the requirement should be for a given role. That's easy enough to define as well.
Well, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, when it comes to Matt, they said he wasn't qualified. And it was a group of people in Nashville that make this decision. When we went over Matt's resume, he was obviously qualified. Now, here's where I have the issue. It's probably different than yours. I think that people that run for office in these critical positions like that should show their qualifications. I don't think there should be a governing board that should make that happen. Now, the state of Tennessee says Matt Snow is not qualified to run for highway superintendent, but he's qualified to run for president of the United States. And to me, that makes no sense to me. So I think these boards, these governing boards that have the control over that, it's only two positions as far as I know. It's the sheriff and the highway superintendent. So I think if we went back to debates instead of meet and greets, these people that show up that claim that they have the qualifications to have to debate somebody on a public stage across from them would put their qualifications in not jeopardy, so to speak, but it would put them under
Display.
The display. Thank you. And between the two candidates, between Jeff Hedrick and Matt Snow, I would be interested to know who was one that was more qualified than the other. Now, Matt doesn't have any experience running a highway department, but he was a part of the what do you
Good
guys
questions
call it?
like how would you handle X, right? You know,
Yeah.
you can often take your expertise from one area and apply it to another. Another thing too, at the local level, it's generally only one person, but as you go up, then they're bringing a whole team, right? So to
Yeah.
some degree, it's what kind of leadership you have and what can your team bring. I'd love if the whole team could step up. I've seen it in technology, right? And John, what's the area from this thing? And then they can step in and answer. This is my team, and we can
Yes.
handle blah, right?
Right.
That covers it for me. So.
Yeah. Brian, you brought up a good point. I'm going to go ahead and mention this and extend the invite and encourage everyone who's out there watching in this podcast to also do the same thing. We have got to get people who are running for office together for a discussion, a conversation, a talk, a chat. I won't even use the word debate. Debate sounds so confrontational and so much how smart am I compared to how smart you are. That's not what the American people are, Blount County citizens or Tennesseans are wanting to see. But they want to see if someone is running for Tennessee House Seat 20, which I am on 3 November as an independent. I would think that the voter, before they pull the levers on 3 November or during early voting, would want to go, I want to hear Cog and I want to hear Tom Stinnett, who's the Republican incumbent.
Yep.
And I want to hear Karen Gertz, who's the Democrat who's running. I want to hear them all come on and have a civil conversation and talk about things that impact and matter to our Blount County citizens of all ages.
How would they solve the given problems? Yeah.
Exactly. And this is not I got you, or somebody's got to win, someone's got to lose. This is not some kind of sporting event. This is 3 adults who have stepped up to serve our nation, which I'm very proud that they're willing to do that. And it's 3 people who are sharing ideas. A lot of times I think candidates don't want to come on because they're afraid, I don't want to give away my secrets. I want to be able to use them because I want that credit. Leaders, Zig Ziglar, who said, if you don't care who gets the credit, anything is possible. Now think about that. If you don't care who gets the credit, anything is possible. Yep. If we would be willing to work together and not go, well, I got to have the credit. I've got to make sure I'm the winner. All this stuff. If we just said, listen, as a bunch of citizens, we just want to see our nation successful for the next generation. And it doesn't matter who gets the fame, because quite frankly, at this point in life, seriously, are we still chasing plaques and trophies at our age? I think our I love me wall should be pretty full. My wife calls my office my I love me wall because, you got your trophies of success in life on the wall. But at 58-year-old, I'm kind of over me, and it's about we, and it's really about our children and our grandbabies. Because again, I'm a new granddaddy. Say new, my grandson's 62, got another grandbaby on the way, and it's what we're going to leave grandchildren, great grandchildren that matters. My planning horizon is as an elected official is the year 2100. What are we going to do today that's going to make life better for the people who are alive in the year 2100? What trees are we going to plant today that we will never experience the shade for them that we would stand in it, but someone's going to have the shade from a tree we planted today? See, that's leadership. It don't take you long to figure out if you're a politician or a leader. A politician talks about me, I, look what I've done, hear me, look at me, like me. A leader talks about we, us, the team. Leaders unite, politicians divide. This is common sense. United we stand, divided we fall. A house divided cannot stand.
Yeah.
Guys, this is not rocket science. The problem is we've got so many. I got a really text yesterday from a former cadet who graduated in 2020, who was one of our cadet squadron commanders at Heritage. He was a great young man, wanted to serve our nation, was patriotic, did numerous color guards, was proud to carry our U.S. flag. And over 6 years, he came to me, and yesterday I started talking with him a couple of days ago. And I said, it's election season, and here's what I'm doing, and what you're thinking about young voters. And he goes, Colonel, he goes, I don't want to have anything to do with politics. And he goes, a lot of people my age, we're sick and tired of this division and this toxic language that we just don't want to have anything to do with it. And that is scary, my friends. When our young people are saying we don't have anything to do with our republic, our democracy, because it's so divisive, so ugly. And what I find about young people, they don't seem as cliquish as maybe we were when I was growing up. There was these little cliques now, but I love seeing at Heritage, people, they just tend to group together. It's not as much about socioeconomics and this and that. They tend to want to get along. They want to have a sense of community. And I think that's the right sight picture. So for them, when they see ugliness and they're seeing adults be bad role models, they're like, if that is what being an adult looks like, or being a citizen looks like, I don't want to have
me out.
So count me out, right? So Alan, your thoughts on this, brother? I mean, you're a dad. You've got grown children and so forth. I mean, any thoughts about what you're hearing from young people over on the West?
I'm really proud of what I've seen the younger generation step up. You have the kids that were victims of the shooters in Florida, et cetera, and they weren't getting sufficient backing from the parents, and they got on board and they got into politics, right? And I'm very proud of those folk. And to see the young generation, they've had enough. They realized that the older generation is dysfunctional, and they're not going to listen to us. We were the same way. We were the older generation wouldn't listen to us. But I look forward to them getting the reins of power. And that starts with getting their vote out, right? And by getting that vote and being informed, right? Yeah. And so the more that we can help the younger generation pass on what it is that we've learned, and that's the good news about what the internet has done, is everybody can put their voice in, and then you sort of tune your lens as to what voice you want to hear. But then the nice thing about this new AI is the ability to bring all those voices together and synergize it, synthesize it into something that makes sense to you from those other things. And that's what they can do too. They grew up with that. They grew up with the mouse in their hand and the internet on all the time, right? Yeah. And so now they can connect with everybody. And so that's what it's about to some degree, is getting a clear message, explaining things in a clear way so that it makes sense. And then I think that that's a path that they can follow.
Yeah. And so I think podcasts are one of the things that are going that direction. I believe that the mainstream media is the biggest part of the division that Jeff was talking about, where they play both sides of the aisle there, and then they watch it all unfold on social media, where people are going back and forth to each other because it generates likes and that kind of stuff like that. And I think the young people that don't like that, they don't watch the news on TV. They're not reading local news.
I'm an old guy, and I don't do it either.
And I don't either. You know what I mean? And so they're gravitating to some of these things. So
I want to go hear from the expert, right? I go right to the expert on the subject, and that's who I want to listen to.
That's right. Yeah. There's no more waiting on somebody's question being answered or whatever. And then I've even expressed that, look, if you're not paying attention to mainstream media, when you get into Fox and all of them, all of their main guys, Hannity, all of them, they all have podcasts on the side that you have to pay for that subscription, because they all know that this is going in that direction. And so they're trying to get in there, and some of them are in there based on the fact that they got such a large following. But the difference between
Tucker's
us
doing very well on his own, completely independent, right?
and
So,
yeah, completely. But I was going to say the difference
and really,
between us,
honestly, you get more interesting stuff from him and his because he's unfiltered, right?
right,
And
unfiltered, yeah,
whether I agree with him or not, I
right.
still learn something, right? And
That's
so,
what I was going to say because it's unfiltered. So, I mean, I've had a podcast where my cat jumped up on my table here,
and
knocked
your listeners
knocked
appreciate that, real man.
knocked my Coke over. I was like, hang on, I got to pause it. I didn't pause it. I just I'll be right back. Got it all cleaned back up. And I'm like, that's what, I mean, this is normal life every day. You don't see that on Fox. You know what I mean? And
Another
I
key
don't,
thing is your pet loves you. That's a good sign.
my pet, I never thought about it like that, but
Yeah. So let me go back to what I was saying. So Representative Tom Stinnett, I don't know if you're out there right now, but I would love dearly for you to come and let's just have a civil conversation on Resolute Exposure. A chance for you to share what you've done over the past 2 years as an elected official, how you have made Blount County and Tennesseans' lives better, a little bit about your background, and just share what's on your heart, because people are looking for folks to be authentic and be real. I when I first started coming on this podcast, or this is my second time, I was like, well, do I wear a shirt, a tie? Do I need to wear a blazer? People aren't worried about that.
no,
They're looking for authentic people who are down to earth, who are not trying to look polished and perfect. We're sick and tired of that. So that being said,
What do you deliver?
exactly, deliver what you
Yep.
say. So Representative Tom Stinnett, would love to have you. I've sent you a text. We've talked. I sent you 3 dates based upon your busy schedule. And if those don't work for you, we will work out something, Brian, and we will work out something so we can have a conversation. And to really kind of make this thing work, Miss Karen Gertz. I do not know you, Karen. Would love to meet you, maybe just first virtually, but would love to have y'all two come on. And again, Brian is such a gracious guy. He is not trying to take pot shots at the folks. He basically lets us talk. And he is so kind to let us have this forum. And he sits back and he just kind of listens.
Yep.
So Karen and Tom and citizens of Blount County and citizens of District 20, I think you deserve to hear all 3 candidates for Tennessee House Seat 20 that you're going to be voting for on 3 November. You need to hear us talk. You need to ask questions. You need to challenge us with tough questions and let us answer them to the best of our ability. And at the end of the day, hopefully deliver what we say we're going to do. But that's going to allow you to then be able to make a better, more logical decision, a very important decision when you hire someone that's going to be paid by taxpayer dollars to do your work of the citizens, that's going to build a nation and a state and a county that's going to hopefully be around for another 250 years. Do not go into the ballot booth and go, my parents, my grandparents have always voted for party X, and I just keep voting them. Guys, that is a dangerous recipe. If you're hiring people based upon just what team they lump on or what jersey they wear, and you're not looking at the content of their character and looking at their qualifications and credentials, you are setting us up all for failure. And we as citizens must take responsibility for our hiring actions. So do not go and take the easy way. This deserves some mental work. It deserves some research, and let AI help you some if you want to. But by gosh sakes, do not default to a simple position that is inaccurate in the 21st century in 2026. So I say that. So Brian, you're good with Tom and Karen coming on. Hopefully all 3 of us together, or if we have to do it kind of piecemeal, we can do it. Are you okay for hosting this conversation?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I know you have tried to get as many candidates on your program. You have given them time, and some have accepted, some have not accepted, and some have been warned not to come on your program.
Yeah.
And that is a foul. That is coercion. That is strong arm mob tactics. And if that right there is illegal as can be, that is wrong. And I hope that's not happening. But if it is happening where people are being told, that is cutting into their freedom of speech. And that's one of our rights. So with that being said, Brian, what's your thoughts on that?
Whether it's legal or not, I don't know. I'm not an expert on it. It's a fine line, and honestly, it promotes this little podcast when they do that as much as it does when they praise it. So I welcome it all. So, but yeah,
If they're
I
worried
would
about
welcome.
you making an impact.
I'm doing something right. Yeah, you know what I mean. And so they're not always. Let's see. They don't always like the people that I have on the podcast, but some of these people are good in the areas that of the discussion that we are involved in. Some of these people ran for positions and lost in the primaries, and so they have an idea of how some of these things went down and that kind of stuff. So. But yeah, I'll take all of it, the good, the bad. I don't censor anything, not even the bad comments or whatever, because I love the Constitution and I believe in all that. Now, if it's just mean, it's just on them, but it doesn't bother me at all. But I appreciate that, Jeff, that you would mention something like that, because I do agree with you that if you're telling people not to do something, especially on a little podcast like this that gives it all away for free and allows you to do it the way that you want to do it, and I don't hit any of those hard questions that a lot of people why didn't you ask this or why didn't you ask that? We just want to know the individual that we're supposed to be voting for, and not voting down ballot just because that's what my parents did. You know what I mean? So I thank you for that. Appreciate that.
I tell you what, I just think it's, the biggest thing I think Resolute Exposure and other podcasts and folks who are trying to bring the truth to our citizens. And that's what we need. You've got to have reliable information. And so you're right. Legacy media, I no longer listen to it too. We turned in our cable box a couple of years ago because the content was not valuable to us or my wife and I. And now where do I get my news? Through podcasts, through folks that, and a cross section, not just one, but I listen to varying opinions.
Me too.
But there's a quote that says all politics are local. And I think Anna Gibson mentioned that last night. If you really want to make a difference, the country is too large for any one of us to get our brains wrapped around. It's too big. About the most we can focus on is maybe our county. And it's hard to get our brain wrapped around this county. But we need to focus on, Theodore Roosevelt said, do what you can with what you got where you're at.
Yeah.
TR basically was calling us, if we're living in Blount County, this is where we must stand, we must fight, and we must do everything we can to make Blount County the best county possible. And then maybe that will have an impact across the entire state, and maybe then our state will have an impact across the country, and then maybe our country can have an impact worldwide.
Yeah.
Because I think, Alan, you said, and I share this, our goal is for peace, to bring peace to this world, to provide a world where people work together, and a world where people aren't dying, mothers are not losing their babies in war and things. By this point in life, if we haven't figured out as human beings how to get along, it is absolutely a shame. But it seems like we just don't figure it out from one generation to the next. We're still about as barbaric and as mean. And we're actually just got more fancy ways to kill each other now, right? Technology. And now we can even hire these drones and robots to do the dirty business, the dirty deeds for us, right?
There's a whole Star Trek episode on that when the planets they warred and you just showed up. Your number was up. You'd been killed, so you went into the euthanizing booth and then that's how they kept peace. So that was a very interesting. That was a kind of episode.
That's pretty funny.
If you talk about Tennessee, and we talk about Tennessee volunteers, and it goes back to, there has been a Tennessee in every major conflict going all the way back to the Revolutionary War, and we're very blessed. We've got Revolutionary War soldiers and warriors and heroes who are buried in our cemeteries here in Blount County. And if you haven't been to the Blount County library, or not library, but museum, Miss Christy Martin and her team over there. Brian, have you been to our Blount County Museum?
I have not.
Brother, you need to go, because Christy, who is a retired educator and has a big heart for service and sharing the great news of Blount County and the things that we've done for this country. They've got this 250th exhibit that really talks about Blount Countyans who served in the Revolutionary War, and there's just all kind of great information, and they're willing to carry you out to the cemeteries and let you look. We need to honor their memory by making our world better today. That's the way we honor those who have fallen, who have served, is doing our part to make life better today. So I'm going to encourage anybody out there, if you haven't went to the Blount County Museum, which is right down by the Sheriff's Department and by the hospital, Blount Memorial, is go. And Miss Christie and some of the other team, they've come out and actually done presentations for our cadets and for other heritage students. Encourage them to come out to your workplace or to your school and share and go out and visit them. So let's see, Brian, we're still doing pretty good on time right now. Got a few more minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
We sure do. Yep.
Okay. So Kay and I love doing our travel in the summer. And so we had a chance to kind of do a little bit on the Outer Banks, but where we went to, and it was just kind of, timing was great. We actually ended up going to the historic triangle, Williamsburg, Yorktown, Jamestown, and we had a chance to really get our history on. And I must admit, the older I get, the more I want to learn about our nation's history.
Yeah, me too.
And the more I realize I don't know nearly as much as what I should. And I kind of go, did I learn this in school? Maybe I just wasn't interested. Maybe I didn't learn it, whatever. But I brought back 4 souvenirs from my travels. And one is the Constitution of the United States of America, and it's America 250. And I have read the Constitution, but I'm going to make it a goal to read this and reread it, because if we're to protect and defend the document, the Constitution, we need to know what it says.
Right.
And if we're going to be fighting for this Constitution, we need to fully understand it. Number 2, the Bill of Rights. You know, a lot of this stuff, I'm sure maybe in my classes, maybe I studied this, I can't recall, but I think this is very important. So I'm going to definitely make sure I spend some time here. Common sense, Thomas Paine. You know, you kind of remind me, Brian, of Thomas Paine and Benjamin Franklin and John Adams. And, you know, during the Revolutionary War, they helped provide information to the patriots, to the colonists. And in the military, we call it information operations, info ops.
Yep.
Information is more powerful a lot of times than weapons on the battlefield. And you are using common sense, using virtual tools nowadays, and you're helping spread the truth and provide people a forum. Alan, do you remember the Liberty Trees? This is something I had to kind of learn about, but did you hear about the Liberty Trees during the Revolutionary War?
No, I was more thinking about Sun Tzu and how much information is important based on what Sun Tzu taught us.
Yeah, well, Sun Tzu, the art of war, and, you know, Clausewitz on war. But the Liberty Trees was where the colonists and others would gather under a big old tree, oak tree or whatever, and they would share information. They would talk. They would inspire, encourage. And they would do that in person. So in a way, this is like a digital Liberty Tree that you've got going here on Resolute Exposure. It's where we can come underneath the shade of this information tree and get to the roots of the problem, if you will, and work together. And so I encourage us to use electronics, and I encourage us. We need to find the sidewalks and the corners and the town halls, and we need to come together and work together and resolve this as one. Team Blount County. All right. So rules of civility and decent behavior. I saw this and I'm like, I got to get me one of those. That is written by our very own President and former General George Washington. And I think George Washington kind of knew a little bit. So rules of civility and
you got my interest.
Me too.
I think every one of us citizens probably need to go back and reread this. And I'm
Because
going
he
to make,
understands how to be uncivil the
yeah,
best, right? You know, so that if he's talking about it, then it's got to be good stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, I was up there and learned a lot. So I've really, the past year or the past 6, 7 months, this 250, my brain has been focused on watching more documentaries on YouTube and seeing Revolutionary War. Did y'all go see Young Washington? Did either one of y'all go see Young
Not
Washington?
yet. I'm looking forward to it.
I wait for it to come to the house.
Yeah. So Alan, you haven't seen it, but you're going to watch it or what?
Yes, I'm going to watch it. Yes.
Young, I wanted to go see it.
I've seen a couple of preview clips, right? What they got for the trailers.
Yeah,
They got
me
quite a few
too.
different trailers.
Yep.
There's some amazing videos right now on YouTube. If you go out to American Revolutionary War, there's just so much great content. It's just different, whatever. But gentlemen, have y'all read Washington's farewell address, 1796? Before
Maybe once I remember how is that where he talked about how it was important that he had to let go and not hang on to his seat of power?
yes.
I do. Never read it, but know some of it.
Okay, well, you're exactly right, Alan, and it's where basically the people were like, "Hey, we love you, George Washington.
Right.
You can just be
Right.
our
Don't
king.
leave us.
Yeah.
You can stay forever." And George Washington was a leader. He knew that would not be good for a nation. He was kind of a proponent for term limits, wasn't he?
He was
I
the
would
original
say,
term limit,
yeah.
wasn't he?
Yes.
George Washington goes, I could serve. I mean, the people are just like, hey, you just stay forever, brother. You're good. And he's like, no. Because he understood something that leaders understand and politicians don't. Leaders any human loses energy and motivation after a period of time. Because once you are absorbed in a situation for so long, you kind of become part of the problem a lot of times. And that's what that's why they move military leaders around. About every 2 or 3 years, I would go to another assignment because we had an up or out promotion system. They didn't want me to sit at some base and homestead there for 20 years. That is not good because you grow through going to different locations and learning different assignments and having different challenges. When you get into a comfort zone that you can pretty much go on automatic pilot to do your job, it's time to go to something else. Because that means you're not growing and you're not probably giving the position the effort and the quality it deserves. So term limits are critically important. George Washington talked about it. But gentlemen, as we wrap up, I just want to kind of point out what George Washington said. He warned us about political parties. And this was from his experience in the old world and in the colonies as well. And he goes, listen, political parties are not good because they're divisive and they're mean-spirited. Now, divisive and mean-spirited, that was his words. And they will cause a fraction among the citizens, a division, and which will allow foreign influence to come in and impact in a negative way our nation.
Yeah.
This was 250 years ago, or a little bit less than 200, 1796. And George Washington knew that was the case. Unfortunately, Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson had a squabble between themselves. And I really wish Washington would have just squashed that squabble. But Hamilton started building his little posse, and Jefferson started building his posse. And ultimately, that became the roots, the nexus of political parties.
Yep.
And I think by then, they said George Washington was probably he had been working and serving so long, he was probably like, oh, I just don't have the energy to keep fighting against these other grown men who should know better. But guys, President Washington, General Washington was right on target. Political parties are divisive. They're mean-spirited. Just listen to the rhetoric.
Yeah.
That is some of the most toxic, mean-spirited, divisive language. And that's what's turning our young people away from being good citizens and actively involved. We need more young people voting, but we need more young people running for office.
Yeah.
But they're not going to run for office if they have to become mean-spirited, toxic. That is not in the normal DNA of a human being to be that way. And anybody who can become that mean and bitter, there's something deep in their character that's broke. So I would say this. People look at me like I'm some kind of unicorn with a horn on my forehead when I'm saying I'm running as an independent. And they're looking at me like, That ain't never going to work. You can't do that. Why not? Why not? I got it. You're going to vote for your party. You're going to vote for the party. You're never going to change. You're going to go to your grave doing that. But you know what? If we can get new people who believe in something more promising to vote, we're going to start replacing politicians with leaders, and these leaders are going to be independents, because no good leader is ever going to bow to some political party agenda. Leaders lead. Leaders are independent in nature. You don't find leaders clumped together. Leaders are found like stars. They're scattered because leaders are rare and they're unique. And so I'm going to challenge everybody out there. We need leaders. You're not going to find leaders clumped under some groupthink type of organization. They're going to be found individually, and we got to pull that talent out and encourage them to run. But they're not going to sacrifice their core values. They're not going to compromise. They're not going to be bought. And you know what? The current system wants people who will take money and bow down to influence, and that is not what we need. We need leaders. What say y'all two guys? I mean, I'm done. This is all I've got to say for tonight. Whether anybody listens to me or at all, I feel proud that I'm doing what needs to be done as a warrior and a poet. And I will hopefully die with my boots on and know that I did the best I could during the time I had on this earth to leave this world better than we found it. Yeah. And I think I challenge every man and every woman to do the same thing. Gentlemen, what y'all's closing thoughts on this?
You've got a long trail of doing that kind of stuff. I've always enjoyed listening to all the impact you made in each place that you go. Go to where you are and grow where you're at. So yeah,
thank you.
That's brother. Good. Go to where you are and grow where you're at. That's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah. I like that. So when you talked about all that old stuff, that absolutely interests me. Me and Scrappy Dog, we do civics. Well, we did civics last Thursday. We're going to do it again tomorrow. We're going over all the Supreme Court opinions that happened over the last few weeks, digging into that a little bit, and all that stuff interests me for sure. And then the name Resolute Exposure comes just from what you said a little while ago, Jeff, is it means determined to tell. And the whole thing was because I know that we're in more of an information war than anything. And with these information wars that are coming from mainstream media, they're more like little psyops than anything. So if we can decipher with what truth that they allow us to have, and I can find a way to put it out here and let people make a good, solid decision based off the information that we're sharing, then I did exactly what I was supposed to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I think that is one of the biggest problems right now is we are not teaching our citizens, our young adults, our children of how to become a good citizen. It's like anything else. You must teach our children how to be good citizens. What does it look like, and help them understand it. So you're right. In fact, one of the things I posted, you may not be able to see it, is 10 focus points for teaching civics to children. And, the mission of Air Force Junior RTC is to develop citizens of character. And I believe more and more, there's a lot of things we can talk about day to day in the classroom, but helping people become good citizens and understand their rights and obligations is probably one of the best things we can do in our public education arenas and in our churches and in our youth groups and on our sports teams. So, Alan, I'm excited about you being over in Shelby County, because again, this I think is about 390 miles as you drive from Blount County to Shelby County, and our goal is to do.
I don't drive anymore. I let the car drive me.
I heard that. so anyway, share Resolute Exposure over on the west side of Tennessee. Love to, if Ryan's willing, every time I'm coming back on board, I'd love if your schedule permits. I think, let's see, Brian, what's our next?
I thought it was August. I still write this down, Jeff.
I heard that.
So it looks like August. So it's not on this calendar. I thought it was 12th, August 12th. Yes, it is. Jeff Cogg, August 12th.
Okay, August. So same time. So Alan, don't know what your schedule looks like, but brother, I would love for you to think a little bit about what we've talked about and then bring more great ideas. This just helps more brain power, more opinions, more teamwork. So yeah, I hope you can join us for that one. And I hope, Mr. Tom Stennett and Miss Karen Gertz, please, please, please don't let anybody influence you to not come on this podcast. Brian is a good guy. He's a heritage mountaineer, and I'll vouch for that. He's a good man. And I tell you, Robert, I know Robert's not here. These folks are not trying to hijack anybody. They're going to give you a chance. They're going to show you respect to talk about why you should be hired by our Blount County citizens. I think our citizens deserve it. So don't let anybody talk you out of coming on and talking. And I'm willing to meet you at any place that works good for you, and other opportunities and other podcasts that y'all may be affiliated with. Let's have some great conversations between now and early voting in October. And by 3 November, let's say that if none of the other races, District 20 House seat was one of the most helpful, respectful, collaborative election races we've ever seen here in Blount County. Let's let that say that about our House seat. All right, teammates, I appreciate what y'all do. God bless you both. And just pray for our country and people to step up and do the right thing.
And Alan, when you get yourself situated, in a place that you want to come on and talk about the AI or technology or anything like that, we'll do this again. And you don't have to have Jeff with you if you don't want to. So, but yeah,
let's talk about it. We got lots to talk about.
Yeah. Interesting. Love it. That kind of stuff. And it may not appeal to everybody.
Share some stuff.
Right. So yeah, we could talk about that off the show, how that works. When you become a guest. Yeah. So, okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
I'll talk to you guys soon.
Yes, sir. God bless you. Be safe. Bye-bye. Take care.
All right, guys. That was Jeff Coggin. Oh, why won't this? There we go. House. Look at there. Let me get my notes up here. Independent candidate for Tennessee House, seat 20 on November 3rd. And a very good friend of his, Alan Childress, who is tech savvy and all that good stuff, and just obviously a generally decent commentator there. We'll have to have him come back on and talk about some of the technology stuff. I had an opportunity to spend a few minutes with him before the show started to go over the technology stuff that what he's interested in business-wise and all that stuff like that. So very good individual to have on the show to talk about that kind of thing. And so tomorrow, 7:45, Caught Up, we'll have me and Scrappy Dog, Gandalf of Blount County, on there going over the other SCOTUS rulings and civic duties or civics as a whole, because we do think it's important. We have a roadmap on how this country is supposed to operate, and it's important that we get back on that right road to make that happen. So with that being said, you guys have a good evening. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button, share it, everything. Have a good evening. Bye.